Hello, and welcome to another Monster Proof Developers Play video diary. This is an example playthrough of one of the levels that one of our players sent us and asked for help with. And it's a really interesting problem that it gives us a chance to look at quite a few things about Monster Proof that are useful to know how to handle. So before I get started in the puzzle itself, one thing that people have sent feedback on is confusion about the order that you need to do levels or puzzle pieces. So you need to start in at the trading post, but once you get to the forest here, you really need to do all of these before you can proceed, and it doesn't really matter what order they're done. If there is an order that matters, the axes will disappear from the ones that are available. Now it turns out that even that is not as strict as you might think, because you can still go in and solve a level that has axes. So here this has the X on it of the two crossed axes, but I can still click on this part or whatever. And so I'm also going to show you how you can use that to your advantage to get through levels more quickly. So let's get started. So here we are starting on the first section of road. There are no freebies that we can use, and there are no crossroads that we need to get rid of. So we can just copy this up. And now before I hit Open Sesame, let's move on. And now notice that because I've dragged something up into the forest, that means that all of these forest puzzles will now have something in them. So you notice they were empty before when I clicked on it, and now that I've put something into the forest in this part, remember it's the same forest. Okay, so let's take a closer look at what's going on in here. So we open this up, and there's something's bigger than 0, right? Or equal to 0. And so we can open it up, and we see some confusing make address. This is a function that makes pointers out of two integers, and it's usually not something that you have to reason about in terms of solving things, which is why we give it a solid color background. So that purple is kind of our hint that all you really need to do is make sure it's the same in the bottom, and you'll be good to go. And same thing for the brackets and the guy with the blades around him. So this is assigned to me. It's kind of like a don't tread on me. I'm going to kind of skip that part. And to be less hand wavy, if I really want to, I can just simply confirm that it's the same on top and bottom. And actually now I can know that I don't need to think about that part. So now we've reduced our equation to 0 is less than or equal to a plus b, and a is the same on top and bottom, but b is not. And specifically, b is changing in a way that does not help us. We go from the Viking Dracula or Viking vampire to Viking vampire -1. There's sort of an unfortunate side effect of our system that it sort of puts it as -1+, but it's getting smaller as you go from top to bottom. Well, if this second expression, this b, is turning into b -1, and again we can ignore a, well then we no longer know that the bottom is true just because the top is true. Right, hopefully that makes sense. If you take b and that's bigger than or equal to 0, if it's non-negative, but then we subtract 1, we don't know. Maybe it was 0 and now it's -1. So we need to prove that this will still hold. Now, as we mentioned in a tutorial, generally if you run into a problem like this, especially with forests, it is often easier to go back to where you first kind of put the expression in the forest. So I'm going to go back to the trading post, and we know that the Viking vampire is going to cause us trouble in the forest, because we know he's going to shrink, and then we're going to have trouble proving that when he shrinks he's still 0 or larger. So now we start to look more at this guy and we go, what do we know about him? Well, we have two statements here that we could use. We know that he's basically between 0 and some very large number. Now, if you think of the good old transitive rule of less than, I can replace this vampire with 0, and as long as he's bigger than 0, then I'm not actually changing the meaning of the equation. So to be clear about it, I'm going to use the safe replace. So all I've done in game terms is I am going to replace the 0, replace the vampire with a 0. Now, in order for this to be the same statement, the same fact, I need to know that he's bigger than 0. Otherwise, I've changed the fundamental meaning of this entire sentence, this mathematical sentence. However, if I have both this thing and I also know that he's bigger than 0, this is all identical to what we had before. It's just a slightly longer way to say it. An easier way to think of this maybe is, if x is less than y plus z, and then you replace z with 0, but you know that z is 0 or bigger, then you know that it's just the transitivity rule, or maybe you put an a in instead of a 0. So I don't think I'm doing a very good job of explaining this, actually. So I'm actually going to stop and let you kind of work it out on your own. But it hopefully will make sense. Now, okay, so why is this important? Because we have the freebie form of this, so we don't need it. Remember, we would like to get rid of this vampire because he's going to change in the loop. And so we'd really like to just completely get rid of him from this forest gate, because this top gate with the forest is what determines what goes into these forests. So I can move this freebie up and get rid of the left half there. And now I've simply moved the statement that was here before up into the freebie, and now we have a nice clean expression which doesn't have the vampire in it. In fact, I can even double click on this less than and use the simplify to get rid of the plus 0. Now I have this nice tight expression on the top, and I have the freebie, which when those two are taken together do prove the same thing that we had at the bottom that we started by copying up. Remember, we started from a copy of this, and we made only safe changes to it. And so now we have this great solution. Now when we come into these for loop or forest puzzles, which if you've been reading our blog, hopefully you've realized that forests are loops. And we can look at all 4 of them, and they're actually identical. And that's another side effect of the way our system works. It doesn't impact the gameplay. So thankfully, all 4 of those are now taken care of. So that leaves us only with these 4 roads to the gold mine, or these 4 puzzles. So let's take a look at, and then again, it doesn't matter what order we do them. So we'll just take a look. Let's see. First, let's see if we have a freebie that does anything with the same characters. No, but I do have a crossroads, and I should have looked for this before. Now, whenever I see a crossroads, I always want to use it, and unfortunately, it does change the puzzle. Number 1, it's taken our 0 is less than freebie out of the first part of the puzzle, and it's also added another piece of the puzzle over here. So now that I know there are crossroads, I'm going to do a crossroads check because I want the puzzle to be in its final form. And while I'm doing that, I will answer the question that probably just popped into your head. Why don't we just do that? Because it turns out that you can actually get into infinite loops this way. This is part of the interesting science behind this, that in some puzzles, which we'll cover in the future, it's actually possible that you know, every time you expand a crossroad like this, you're just adding to the puzzle, to the level where it's not getting you anywhere. And we need a human to sort of recognize that this is not making any progress anymore. So let's see, I think I've gotten those three. Got the bottom one. I think I am now good. By the way, the reason that I scroll to the bottom of the freebie section quickly is because they always appear at the bottom, which, now that I say that out loud, seems like a pretty good optimization to move all crossroads to the top. So maybe we'll do that. Getting near to the end here. No crossroad. No crossroad. No crossroad. No crossroad. Okay, so now I have the level in its final form. So now I can go ahead and do the solution. I need to activate this freebie. Now I can start doing these in any order. And I do not have any freebie that talks only about those three characters. So I will copy up here. Again, all of my loop or forest puzzles are now solved. And I believe that these may have changed characters. That's another thing that happens when you expand a crossroad that I don't remember. For some reason, I feel like this was not a dragon. You could probably scroll back, but it doesn't actually matter whether it changed or not. But that does happen sometimes. This looks identical. I can confirm, but my intuition is that, again, we're going to have, because we did our copy up once, it turns out that all of these gates that are these signs that are attached to this forest that go to the gold mine, they're all related, and so it auto-fills them in. So I now have every gate filled in, every puzzle piece solved. And this is one of my favorite things with levels like this. You've expanded it, it's become quite big. You did some pretty neat math to pluck out the problematic piece, which is always really satisfying when you then go into a forest and it's this nice clean solution. And then if you hold down the control key or command on Macintosh, Mac OS, and you hit Open Sesame, it actually goes through and solves all of them at once, which is really fun. And so there you go. Hopefully that helps. I know that quite a few levels follow this structure, so hopefully that will help you keep moving along and maybe have some fun with it too. So keep sending us feedback. Let us know where you're getting stuck. Let us know if you have questions, and we'll try to get you answers and videos as quickly as we can. Thanks a lot.